Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio is set to be arraigned following his arrest in Washington Monday night. Tarrio is suspected of setting fire to a Black Lives Matter banner stolen.
I'm not going to cry about a group of people that don't give a crap about their constituents.
They call themselves Western chauvinists. They're certainly male-dominated.
And this right here shows you the power when we, the right wing, unite.
Leader of the Proud Boys makes a stunning revelation.
I am a Western chauvinist who refuses to apologize for creating the modern world.
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by.
Breathe fire like a dragon killing demons. I'ma go hard, yeah, we gotta seize the day. Hellfire raining down upon my people. If you're gonna bring the heat, we can bury it today. We all been lost, we all been cold. Everyone rise to our brethren code. We got your back, we all been low. Let's all rise to the brethren.
But in no other nation do people enjoy greater freedom, opportunity, and prosperity than here in the United States of America.
USA! 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 USA!
Do you condemn those people? Can you say that right now?
Okay, I can't say that because I think
Why not?
condemn is a very strong word, and I think it's a little bit too strong. Because I'm the head of the organization and I know exactly what we planned and what we didn't plan, and we did not coordinate to assault the Capitol.
Enrique Tarrio is the Proud Boys' current leader. And over the past 4 years, he's seen the group grow from a few guys in a bar to thousands of members across the United States.
Right now, the most important thing that we have going for us is that we all share the same belief. The belief that we should put America first. America first! America first! Who's street? Who's street? We're all Proud Boys! We're all Proud Boys!
Drew this one up today. Just a couple days ago on Friday, I had an interesting conversation with our current Lieutenant Governor, Jay Collins, which is running for office, and I hit the mute button through the whole recording. So when I went to go play it at night, we didn't have any audio. So we will have Jay Collins back. It was a great conversation with Jay about his past, things he's done while in office, things that he's done while being lieutenant governor. But today we have somebody that's been doing this for a very long time and has reached, I think, the pinnacle of probably Florida politics, right? Because we always think about the governor, but we don't think about pretty much the head of the representation of the people of Florida. His name's Paul Renner. He is the former House Speaker. A very, very, I went to look up his bio, and the list is just way too long. And we only have about 45 minutes, so I had to cut it short. So without further ado, I bring in the former Speaker of the House and the current Florida gubernatorial candidate, Paul Renner. Thank you for joining me today, Paul. How's it going?
Great. Good to be here.
Great to be here with you. So again, like I said, like your resume is long, extremely long, and I had to cut this down. But let's just get into it. 2 wars in the Navy, then a state prosecutor, then Speaker of your House. How does that come about?
Well, it's a lifetime of service, obviously, from the age 23. But I talk about being battle tested. This is not a job, on the job training type role to be governor of Florida. You want somebody who has gotten it done, who's been under a lot of testing. At age 23, as I said, navigating through mine-infested waters as a young naval officer, leading a small boat team that went out and destroyed those mines. We'd send the guys over, they put explosives on there, pull them back in the boat, and if something happened, it happened to us, not our ship that was about a mile away. And then 20 years later, I led a team of men and women in Afghanistan to stop foreign fighters from coming in to kill Americans. So 23 years in the Navy, 2 wars, prosecutor, violent habitual offenders. I've gotten the worst of the worst in you. That's pressure too in battle testing when you've got a victim beside you, and if that guy doesn't go away, the guy's going to create another victim. That's why they call them habitual. And so getting after public safety, not flinching with some pretty bad dudes and putting them away deservedly that habitual offenders. And also started my own business, partner in a business, private sector experience. And then, as you said, Speaker of the House, running about 500 employees. People consider the Speaker of the House to be kind of the number two behind the governor or the other presiding officer, the President of the Senate, because you really control the budget, you control the legislative agenda, certainly from the House side. And so nobody in the race has, the battle testing as a leader that I have. And you have to ask yourself the question of, what have these other guys ever led? And the answer is they come up well short.
And obviously battling our foreign enemies is quite the battle, but battling other rhino representatives and the Democrats in the Florida House must have been a huge battle.
Yeah, we had a super majority when we came in, 85, the most we've ever had elected to that date. But then you get these people that are, number 84, 85 that think, oh, I won in this district, that's a Democrat district, I should vote like a Democrat. Like, what are you doing? So those become your management challenges, because you spend 80% of your time with the 20% or even the 2% of the people that got elected in a seat that traditionally was a Democrat seat in that great 2022 cycle. And then they want to vote like Democrats. And so that was frustrating, but fortunately we had, what they called the session of the century. So conservatives, I said, won every battle when I was in charge in the legislature. And that's exactly what's going to happen when I'm governor. If you want somebody to fill the big shoes of this governor, you got the right guy who's delivered historic results. The governor said so, that those 2 years were unmatched of any legislature in America. We got it done on the mission.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I've been involved in doing this for about 20 years, and I think the happiest I've ever been with my government here in Florida has been during DeSantis and your tenure. So I kind of want to go through some of your accomplishments here. You passed the largest school choice expansion in the country, not just the state. Walk us through why that mattered to you personally. Why did it hit you?
Yeah. And, this is one of the things that you got things that are thrust upon you, like the insurance crisis I dealt with. I had no interest in doing that, but it was something I had to deal with. This one is one that from the time I ran for office back in 2015, I knew if I ever got in a position, I wanted to make sure that we had educational freedom in this state, that the money follows the student, not the institutions, not the unions, not the, anybody, and not the adults, but that money follows so that a student gets the best education possible wherever they get that. And so that was HB1, which is a nice way of saying that the speaker really cares about this. That's House Bill 1. This was a top priority of mine in the first year that I was speaker. And so we pushed that through, and just to give you some sense of the numbers, over 120,000 new students in the first year alone, which is bigger than the entire population in Arizona that uses school choice. Arizona is the number 2 state in the nation for educational freedom. We had more new students in the first year than they have in total, because we already have, hundreds of thousands that were participating in what was a growing school choice movement. But we said, rip the Band-Aid off, go universal. We included homeschool kids. So if a homeschool parent wants to use that, I created what's called the PEP program as we pushed HB1 across the finish line. Also for kids with disabilities, many of them had to wait, and they were on a wait list. So you're talking about kids with autism, pretty serious issues, or dyslexia, to make sure that they have a great education and they get to the place they need to be, and they have the resources they need for that. So I'm very, very proud of it. I can't tell you how many parents have come up to me and said, you changed our lives. And so it means a lot, because we really have changed lives here in the state of Florida, and education is always going to be important to me. If we don't get that right, we're not going to have a country. And that goes to the indoctrination side of it. But we have to make sure that parents have an out. If the school that they're in, the public school is not serving their needs, they need to have options. And so we give them that option.
Something else is the heartbeat bill. How do you feel about it today?
Well, look, I believe life begins at conception, should be protected through natural death. So that's where Paul Renner comes down on it. What we did there, I'll tell you how it kind of came about, is the House, pushed for the most pro-life side we could to protect the unborn. The Senate wanted exceptions. They would prefer to have a 12 or 15-week period, and they wanted exceptions. So the way that came together to get it through House and Senate was we got to heartbeat, 6 weeks essentially, and the Senate got to exceptions, and that's how that got put together. But I do believe that life begins at conception and ought to be protected all the way through till natural death. And so as a governor, that's where I'll be. and certainly fought also against the abortion amendment that came from out-of-state, interests that put over $100 million to try to jam that into our Constitution. And I alone, among the candidates, stood with Governor DeSantis. We gave over $2 million to stop that in 2024, as well as the school board races that I was engaged in that I don't have to spend in this governor's race. But that's what you want out of a leader, not hoarding it for their next office, but actually getting after the left and beating them every time they try to come into our state to mess around, and we'll stop them. And I let our state get taken down. I want to deliver that message very clearly. And I love the governor because it wasn't his job description to do anything on school board races or these amendments. And a lot of Republican governors sat on their hands, and guess what? Those things passed because they didn't get out of their office and go fight it. I'm going to go fight whenever the left comes in, whatever it is. If it's gun rights or whatever it is, we'll make sure to defend the free state of Florida that I helped build.
Look, I'm one that understands politics, and when people run against each other, they fight, and they throw the TV ads. Something that I noticed about this race, I've never been more undecided in my life on who to choose. That's kind of what prompted me to kind of like try to get to every candidate. We're still waiting on Byron Donalds to respond. That I would get all four, at least of you guys that were supposed to be on the PBD stage. But something that binds you guys is not a single one, and I think this is the first time I see it. All four of you are big supporters of our current governor, because I believe it's because he's a generational governor. They don't come around like that too often. One that just not only changes the conversation, but changes the culture along with it. We went from a purple state, and I'm not going to say it's just DeSantis that did this, all the grassroots groups, our legislators and things like that excited people about these changes, and it's made Florida the best state to live in the country. So I kind of want to talk about DeSantis. Like you helped pass his agenda, and we get to see the DeSantis that's out on TV. How is it like him more on a personal level?
Well, he's principled. What I love about the governor is, he's not gonna lay up if it's an issue of principle, and if he's got to fight, he'll fight. And so he's basically, the good thing is he's basically the same guy in person that he is in public. And we've had a great working relationship. And I agree with you that he has been generational. He's been fantastic. But imagine if we had two back-to-back governors that were those generational kind of leaders. And I would propose to you and your audience, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I did it as speaker to join him in really building the free state of Florida on the legislative front. All those, we talked about some things, but ending DEI in our universities, pushing back against ESG, permitless carry, protecting, all the things we did that were big wins for conservatives. I say that when I was in charge, conservatives won every battle, and we're going back to that for 8 years as governor. I'm not content with where we are. We've made great strides under Governor DeSantis and while I was there, but I've learned as I've campaigned and some of the challenges ahead of us, there's more to be done. And so just imagine if we had 16 years of generational leadership. We don't want to go backwards, and that's what I'm offering to the people of Florida in my contract with Florida that I put forward on our website, voterenner.com, which is my commitment, my written commitment for the first 100 days of the boldest conservative agenda of any of the candidates by far. We're going to get it done, and we're going to continue to step on the gas like this governor has.
Let's talk a little bit about your counterparts, specifically one. Byron Donalds has the Trump endorsement and didn't show up for the Patrick Bet-David debate. What should voters take from that?
Well, he expects a coronation. And if you can't stand on the debate stage with fellow Republicans, how in the world are you going to go up against the Democrats? How in the world are you going to have the courage to go up and defend the free state of Florida? And so it's disrespectful. Voters want debates. They deserve debates. And it's disrespectful of a candidate to not give them those debates. And look, if Byron Donalds thinks he's the right guy to be our next governor, he will be the right guy the day after the debate. He should not be afraid to stand on the stage with the rest of us and put forth his ideas. Answer the why question. He's never answered the why question. Why is he running? Number one, what motivates him to run other than self-promotion? And why is he better than I am or the other candidates are? That's what an election's all about. We want, as Republicans, we believe in merit. We believe in, competition. Put the best person forward to go and smoke the Democrat in November and make sure that we continue to be the gold standard around the country. We cannot go backwards, and he has not offered any answer to that why question, which puts us in real harm's way should he be the nominee as to whether we can beat David Jolly, and that would be a tragic turn of events for our state.
I personally, where you lit a little light in my head was at the Patrick Bet David debate. And look, like I said, I'm undecided. I like the ideas of different candidates. I like the different ideas. I like the seriousness approach that Jay Collins has. I like some of the people think that they're wacky ideas. Some of the wacky ideas that Fishback has. Like one of the things I liked about Fishback, at least like one of the things that he did is he signed a document that said, if I don't, and he listed his agenda, if I vote against this or vote against that, then I will not run for re-election if I win the governorship. So what would be, and to go back on that stage, you felt like the adult in the room, right? I saw the bickering on both sides between Jay Collins and Fishback, and you seemed poised, like it didn't bother you, like you were focused on showing the people of Florida your agenda. And that's what kind of like, I was like, okay, maybe this guy is my guy. Because I could only speak for myself, and maybe the audience from looking at these podcasts, they make a decision. I'm a lifelong Floridian, and I'm a ride or die Floridian, and I love my state. I always tout my state everywhere I go. I love it, and I feel like you were the adult in the room there. What actually would be different from a Governor Fishback or Governor Collins? What would a Governor Renner look like, just in general? Because I'm going to ask you specific questions on that after.
Sure. And, first of all, thanks for bringing up the debate. And I appreciate Patrick Bet David giving us that platform. It moved a lot of momentum our direction. For those that haven't watched it, I'd encourage them to go search it out on YouTube, because it really is. This is why we need debates, because you can have a vibe or whatever on social media or in a mailer or on TV ad. Everybody looks like a hero, right? But when you see them on stage and how they interact and how they handle the crucible of the back and forth of a debate, you get a sense about who can stand in there and defend us against the real opponent, which is the left trying to take down our country. And so I appreciate that. I've gotten that same comment, like, look, you won, you were the adult in the room, the one with substance, the one with receipts. And so how would I be different? Well, nobody has the battle testing. Nobody has the receipts when it comes to results, which is really what matters. Nobody has the vision. If you look at our contract with Florida, all the candidates combined, they've got proposals here and there. James certainly does. Jay has a few. Byron has a few. But if you look at what we put in that contract with Florida, it's comprehensive, and I will make this pledge on your show today, like James, that if I don't get those things, if I back up on anything in that contract with Florida, I will not run for re-election in 4 years. And in fact, I'm happy to resign if I unwind anything and don't commit to pursuing. Obviously, we got to get legislature to agree to these things. But what I put down there are things that I think are urgent today, that we need to not wait 8 years or 7 years, but we need to do it in the first 100 days, like affordability and other things that are in that contract. And so I think what would be different is I'm going to get it done. And if Byron Donalds can point to what he's done in Congress, I know he's passed two bills in 5 years. We did so much that they called that first year the session of the century. So the difference would be someone who you don't have to guess how he's going to be. He's delivered major results and been part of that generational change that you talked about on the legislative front. Most of what the governor accomplished in that legislative sphere that we all brag about was under those 2 years that I was in charge. And that's what you're going to get. You're going to get the same generational leadership that, frankly, I just don't think the other guys, can offer. And I think, there's aspects that, with Jay and James that certainly James and I have policy agreements on some things that that, and I'm sure Jay and I do as well, but I can get it done. That's the basic answer to your question.
Yeah. So let's talk about affordability, right? Because I think there's a lot of like social issues that we listen to on social media, but I speak at a lot of like young Republican clubs. I speak at all Republican clubs down here. And like, although those social issues are like just like something to talk about, and they do care about them. I'm not discounting that. I think affordability is like what's on everybody's mind. You're running on affordability and hurricane recovery. What's the actual plan? Not just a slogan. Like, what's your plan to bring down those costs?
Well, first of all, from a timing in that 100 days, this would be in a special session. I've also committed to that. That means right after I get inaugurated, I want to go right into special session, because right now we're a victim of our own success. People are contemplating, after living here 20, 30 years, leaving the state of Florida because they can't afford taxes, insurance, electric rates. And that's morally unacceptable to me. I will not let people on fixed income leave our state, younger people who can't find a home or find any kind of American dream in this state. We have to make that happen. And so on property taxes, I'm the only candidate in this race that has a plan to fully eliminate homestead property tax, give benefit to small businesses, and I even have some help in there for renters. So you can see that at voterenner.com. It's comprehensive through a combination of savings, and where we need replacement taxes for police, fire, etc. We'll shift the burden away from people who make Florida home, who are ride or die like you and me, to people who vacation here, who speculate here, like private equity that's bought over 100,000 single-family homes and turned them into rentals. That money never hits Florida's economy. It goes out of our state or out of the country. And so those homes are also not available for people to live their own American dream. And so when we talk about overdevelopment, how about the 100,000 plus homes that have been basically sucked up by private equity? And so we need to address that. So they pay a little bit more. So those of us that make Florida home, that are ride or die here for Florida, can have that property tax burden relieved. And so that's property taxes. I've got a plan for insurance. It's got 3 or 4 components we can talk about to reduce insurance rates by 10 to 20%. That's suspending the tax we pay on homeowners insurance. There's what's called a rapid cash buildup. This is very boring stuff, but it works. That is an additional monies that you pay into a catastrophic fund that has been built up. It's very healthy. It used to be broke. That's why we had the rapid cash buildup, but they've never taken it off. We take that off. We also make that cat fund, apply to some storms farther down the chain. It's up where you're never going to hit it, and kind of let that go to work for us. That would, all of that stuff, and talking to the people that, and I'm somebody who's built good policy around saving the insurance market. I know what to do. I know what levers to pull, which again separates me from the others that, in fairness to them, they've just never had any experience whatsoever in the legislative world at that level to know what levers they can pull. But I know the levers we can pull to get those rates down 10 to 20%. Which is huge. People see, those rates going up and up and up. And then electric rates. We've got utilities that are getting paid a guaranteed profit, not based on whether you do well, but based on how much they spend. So you see these solar fields, and they've got basically this gravy train that gets them a guaranteed profit based on a spend that's not good for us. So I want the lowest possible electric that's going to be legally required in statute, that's not dependent on China. We're not going to buy our solar panels from China, and we're going to have reliability. So that means coal, natural gas, nuclear. And so these kinds of things we will do. That's a big fight, big special interest fight. I've taken them on before in the insurance fight, in the social media fight. I've taken on big tech and won. You want a governor who is going to stand up to special interest on behalf of putting Florida first, not swim with special interest, which is the problem I see in this election. We cannot have a governor who is in the hands of special interest, or we're never going to fix our problems.
Amen. Amen to that. So one of those social issues is actually an affordability issue also. And I do understand it, because I'm conflicted on some of these issues. AI data centers, right? It's been a hot topic, especially here in Florida when we're talking about the governor's race. There's a lot of talk about it. Patrick Bet-David brought it up during the debate. I see it on social media all the time. What's your take on these AI data centers?
So imagine this: I'm coming to visit in your house, and you say, "Hey, I want to show you my music collection. I'm really proud of it." And you point me to a wall full of 8-track tapes. That would be kind of laughable. Same thing if you say, "Hey, let me show you my computer data storage," and you point me to your 5 1/4 floppy disks. They're outdated. They're dinosaurs. And so what's on offer today? These 1.0 versions of these hyperscale data centers are a no good, bad deal for Florida. Why? Because they're the equivalent of 700,000 or 800,000 people in electric demand, and you put that on our grid, and you know that it's going to raise your electric rates because it has everywhere it's been tried. Same with the water; they are very water hungry because they run hot, they need cooling, and so they're going to suck our aquifer dry in their current form. And so what I have said, and there's environmental concerns. We were on a panel last night in our Florida Freedom Forum that just had a great viewership if you didn't see it, and talking about with some experts about tonal noise, which is something that, not just the sound, but the vibration and how that affects your sleep, how it affects all kinds of things. They're putting these near an elementary school or people, if it's not out in the middle of nowhere. And so there's a lot of concerns in their current form. With time, these things, we see technology, to go back to the 8-track tape analogy, they're going to get smaller, they're going to get cooler, they're going to hopefully get to a place where we can say, okay, let's have a conversation, but right now, I'm a total hard no. We're not bringing them in this state if they're going to drive up our electric rates, damage our aquifer, and also hurt the environment in a number of different ways. And we don't know those answers. And so we're not going to build first, ask questions later. So I want a statewide moratorium as part of that affordability special session to say, hey, this is art of the deal here too, is that you come to us and you meet the burden of how you're going to solve all those problems I just talked about. Then we can have a conversation. But right now, the answer from me is a hard no. I've been very clear on this, and my opponent Donald's has been, I want to embrace it. I want to build them right now. He wants to fill up the state, says we have plenty of pristine land to use, and he's more than willing to take the floppy disk or the 8-track tape version of hyperscale data centers. That's a huge mistake. And then what happens when they abandon them? Because they're already saying, like, in 3 years, 5 years, we're going to abandon these things that are like 20 Amazon warehouses stacked next to each other. This is just not a good deal for us. And Florida especially is a sensitive ecological location. We're a high growth state, so we cannot afford to be tapped out anymore when it comes to our groundwater. Let them go set up, and I want to beat China and all that. I get that. I want to beat China, but let them go in a state that's losing population. Some of these blue states can take them because all the people are fleeing out of those states, and put them somewhere where it's cooler, where there's abundant water and that type of thing, and not here in the state of Florida in its current form. I'm a hard no.
I woke up one morning, this was a couple months ago, and you probably remember this. I woke up one morning, and look, I use AI for a lot of things. I actually came from my trip because I was setting up an AI system for a friend of mine, like a small AI system for his business. I'm still conflicted because I feel like we're building the weapon of our demise, right? A weapon that could be used against us. And some of these companies are taking America's data. So I think data rights are a big deal. But I woke up to a tweet saying where Palantir said it's moving to Miami, right? And I feel like us big cities, when it comes to all red state governors across the world, across the country, always are like, oh no, I'm going to help the small farmers. I'm like, wait a second, but like, let's talk about what you're going to do for us city folk. But when they went ahead and they said that, I was like, man, I'm going to look at all my Florida buddies, and they're going to be completely against this. And I saw the opposite. I saw everybody, oh my God, congratulations, welcome to the city. I'm like, they're not really going to bring anything. They're going to prop themselves on a high rise. Yeah, their taxes will come our way. But I feel like we're giving them like this sanctuary here in Florida. And I didn't like it, but I know that we need it. And you said something important: stay competitive. We know our competitors and our adversaries across the globe are like building this, specifically China, with no restrictions. They're just gobbling up all the data, and they become stronger, smarter, faster, and maybe like when the cell phones came out, it was a big brick phone. It kind of with the data centers, they're probably huge right now. As technology they're smaller and smaller. So I like your moratorium, but I do have concerns, and I do like your idea where, hey, let's pause a second before we say yes. and stop the propaganda, because for sure they're paying lobbyist groups to like lobby us and, oh, this is great. But I think it has to be in our interest, and taking it slow is, I think, a really good tactic to kind of wait and see what technology moves so fast these days. So I appreciate that. I really do. Let's get into topics that are important to me, because I'm one of those ones that you have to convince. And I feel like the people around me have the same concerns, specifically because we're in a certain space. And I'll start with gun rights. You've held an NRA A rating for over a decade. The Attorney General, I always screw up his last name. It's James Uthmeier. Uthmeier. James Uthmeier did something that I found to be very, very good. Back in 2018, I knocked on doors with Democrats to pass Amendment 4. I believe nonviolent felons do deserve to have their voting rights back. And the gentleman that authored most of it, I work with. And as soon as we got it passed, I called them and I'm like, hey, can we do the same thing for the Second Amendment? I feel like he blocked me after that question. After responding to every single question I had, he's like, no, wait, gone. So the current AG is pushing the courts to a point where what he's saying is that nonviolent felons should get their gun rights back. Do you support this? And if you do, well, I guess, do you support this?
Yes, I do. I do.
Okay. And what would be like since you were a legislator, it's easier to ask you, well, Jay was a legislator also, but how would you implement this?
Well, it would be simple enough to change by statute, and so whether that you give people a 5-year period not to reoffend, but you're talking about somebody stole an iPhone and got a third-degree felony or what have you. That person, I don't see a reason to take away their gun rights, as opposed to a murderer, someone that's a violent, like I mentioned, violent habitual offenders. Those aren't the guys that you want to restore gun rights for. And so I think that's where James is, and that's where I am as well. I think that's solid. In our contract with Florida, we also pledged to codify the open carry decision, which a court made, the first DCA made, to make sure that that's legislation, not just a court decision that could be reversed at any time. We also get rid of restrictions from the Parkland bill. And so I'm on record. And again, if I don't get that done, or I back up on that kind of support as governor, you can vote me out of office, but you won't have to. I won't run for re-election. But that is where I stand on those issues. I think it's important to put those in writing. I agree, and I haven't seen Fishback's document, but I agree with the principle. This is what I have in the contract with Florida, but it's the most comprehensive agenda for any 100 days for any governor probably running for in America. And so you want a governor who's going to put it out there and say, if you're a ride or die Floridian, a conservative like me, and you want to see us continue to hit the gas on the free state of Florida, I'm your guy. And I can back it up by the fact that you don't have to guess about whether I can do it or not. I'm the only one that has the full body of receipts to show that I did, and we're going to keep it going.
You said something interesting there. You said that crime to me and justice is at the utmost importance, right? And getting these gun rights back for nonviolent offenders, that part I understand completely. I think Jay said it was a little bit complicated how he said that. He said yes. It was a little complicated how he said, like, he had to go through an interview process and each individual. And I'm like, okay, well, how do we go through this bureaucratic process? Your solution seems simple, but the reason why this is important to me is something that I focus on is weaponization. It's been my lane, right? And you said that you helped pass this, this open carry, this constitutional carry across the state. I was in prison in solitary confinement for 3 years. And I thought I was going to be there for the rest of my life. I got a 22-year sentence. And when I came out, I came out on January 21st, about a little over a year ago, almost a year and a half ago. And I kind of walked into like this weird conservative dimension, right? That I didn't even expect to happen. Like Elon Musk owns Twitter. Now Twitter's free speech. I come to Florida and like I greet my family, and then I come into the office the very next day. And like my guys come over and they got their ARs strapped to their backs, you know, and I was like, wait, what's going on here? It's like, no, we got this thing passed. So it's kind of like the culture from, and to get into federal politics for a second, you know, in 2016, like something magical happened. You had the president come in and like kind of just change the entire culture of what it is to be a conservative. We became even more conservative, and we became more principled, because this question that I just asked you, if I would have asked that in 2012 of conservatives, they'd be like, absolutely not. It doesn't matter if you just stole an iPhone. You don't deserve to get your gun rights back ever in your life again.
Right.
And I don't think that that's fair. But regardless if I think it's fair or not, where are we today in 2026? All three candidates, I haven't been able to ask Byron this, but all three candidates support nonviolent felons getting their gun rights back. And it's been an uphill battle. I screwed up when I was a kid, you know. I screwed up when I was younger. I'm not even going to say a kid, you know. And it was a nonviolent offense. It was a white collar offense, and like I'm not a dangerous person. And I was a big gun enthusiast, and they took away all my guns. So getting this back is of the utmost importance to me, which brings me into like my actual case. Weaponization, using the federal government to go after, specifically with the law enforcement and the DOJ and the federal level, and here the prosecutorial level at a state level, targeting people because of their political beliefs or who they supported for president. As a former prosecutor, how do you feel about weaponization just in general, and then just like things that you've seen or things that you've done to prevent that, or things that you would propose to prevent that from happening?
Right. Yeah, no, it's very important. And look, we cannot devolve where, you know, we get in charge and we do it to the left gets in charge and they do it to us. We will become a third world nation very quickly. And so what informs my experience is, as a prosecutor, honestly, I come out of that with a lot more emphasis on the need for civil liberties, the need to protect the rights of defendants. It should be a high bar to prosecute anyone and take away their liberty. That's important. And that's also informed by my time in the military. You know, and I went out and fought, you know, as I said last night at this function. Hey, I had guys in uniform next to me. They may have been liberal Democrats. I don't know. I don't care. But I also fought for everybody. I fought for the libertarian, the conservative, the progressive, to exercise their rights as they see fit. The problem is, on the left, you see a willingness, a comfort and willingness to coerce, to weaponize, to force people to agree with their position on everything. And if you don't agree with it, they're going to come after you. You know, if you raise your kids in a way that a government in a blue state doesn't like, they're going to take away your kids, not because of abuse, because of a difference over values. This kind of development on the left has to be opposed at all cost. And so what I'll tell you, and I said this last night as well, is if you're a lifelong Republican and you're stealing, you know, Medicaid dollars or whatever else, I'm going to hold you accountable. But in the same way, I'm not coming after somebody just because they're a Democrat. We cannot have that. We have to make sure that some things are beyond the reach of partisan politics, and that means the rule of law has to be there for everybody. It has to be, you know, protective of everyone's rights.
And here, what I'm going to ask you is agree or disagree, and then comment on it. January 6ers. I made this statement on the evening of January 6th. I wasn't there. I wasn't there at the Capitol when that happened that day. And I said, look, if you put your hands on a police officer, you should be arrested and prosecuted. If you broke broke something while you're in there, you stole something, I believe that you should be prosecuted for that. If you trespass, I feel like there's like a gray area with the trespassing on Capitol grounds. But like if you trespassed, you get trespassed, right? You get the misdemeanor, you do whatever it is. And I think here, personally, I believe that, the president wouldn't have pardoned the 1,575 January 6ers had the Biden administration just like handed out like misdemeanors and like assault on a police officer, destruction or stolen property, and given the sentence that you're supposed to get. I'm pardoned. I say this all the time. I'm pardoned. If I wanted to overthrow the United States government, and I'm at liberty to say so, because with my pardon gives me the ability to not be charged again with the crime. But I'd be lying to you if I told you that, because that was never my intent. My intent was I felt the election was stolen, and I wanted to go protest along with tens of thousands, I think hundreds of thousands of Americans that day. Do you agree or disagree that they were prosecuted, or just agree or disagree with the statement I just made?
Yeah, I do. I think you're spot on. Look at the trespass, for example, that gray area, and I agree if it's a public accommodation. Let's say, okay, they weren't not there with consent, okay, in the way they came in. In Florida, at least, that's a second-degree misdemeanor, carrying a maximum of 60 days in jail, not years in jail. And so I think what you saw is a real over prosecution. And I agree with you. Look, you touch a cop, you go to jail. Period. You break something, you steal something, you go to jail. But we have to make sure that we're very zealous. And I will say this for the left. Look, if you want to go out, and I say this all the time, if you're, a leftist protester, you can protest and scream and cuss and swear to your heart's content. But when you start throwing rocks through windows and Molotov cocktails or lay hands on cops, that's when there's not going to be, any excuses. But you saw the stark difference in the, whatever they call it, the summer of rage after George Floyd, and how that was treated like a mostly peaceful protest when you see, a raging fire in the background. And so the left is willing to look the other way for pretty serious criminal offenses, while aggressively prosecuting people that they disagree with. And you see not just January 6th, go back to Obama with the IRS investigations and going after churches, going after pro-life protesters, putting them in jail for years and years for, what looked a lot like exercising their First Amendment rights. And so we have to be really, really careful, never, ever, ever to let politics be a consideration. If you committed a crime and the facts bear that out, then you got to pay the price. But if it doesn't, politics can never come in and impose itself on the justice system, or we have no justice system to speak of. And we don't want to live in a world where people in red states that are liberals are in fear, and conservatives are in fear in blue states, that because of their politics, the state is going to come after them. And so we have to be very diligent. And I think you're going to see me as governor be very, very even-handed. We're going to enforce the rule of law, but we're not going to weaponize anything. And I would speak up on defense of anybody who I think is being prosecuted for political purposes only.
This is the last series of short questions before our closing. And I think you're out of everybody that all the governor candidates that I've interviewed, I think you're the best to kind of answer this. When video evidence in a case doesn't match what's in the charging affidavit, what should happen?
Well, it should mean, the police bring the charges. The job of the state attorney, and we had these cases all the time where, the evidence just wasn't there, it was contradicted, that you have to make the right call. I mean, the job of a prosecutor is not to prosecute. The job of a prosecutor is really as a minister of justice. And if justice is not done by that charging document, you don't bring the charges. And I'll give you an example. I had a stalking, it was a case with two neighbors, and there was video evidence. And what happened was the one neighbor called the cops and said, my neighbor held a gun at me, blah, blah, blah. This guy was going to go to jail and possibly have a minimum mandatory penalty. Thank God he had a camera on his house, and you see That never happened. You can see the whole feed. And so the video evidence directly contradicted. In that case, the neighbor got charged for filing a false police report, which he should. He almost got his neighbor thrown in prison for a minimum, I think it was 3 years at that time, for an assault with a firearm, just based on that testimony. And so video evidence is very, very important. That's why I'm a believer in body cams. I recommend to cops to wear body cams, because you know what? You get false charges all the time against you as a cop. You can just say, look at the body cam, and you say, okay, it wasn't what this guy said. And you've seen this over and over again with some of these, shootings where they're coming out and saying the cops were wrong, and then you see it in the light of the evidence, the video evidence, that you see it was a whole different story. And so I think in that circumstance, you don't bring the charges if you see video evidence that contradicts the underlying allegations by witnesses, if it's rebutted by the video.
Are you familiar with the Campus Free Expression Act?
I'm not specifically, but I'm familiar certainly with the Chicago statement on campuses to make sure that we have free speech. And look, I'm a believer. If you want to talk about Karl Marx, do so to your heart content, but also Adam Smith. Talk about communism, but talk about what communism has actually done in countries where it's tried. And so if you're talking about basic free speech, let free speech reign, man. Let everybody have their say, because at the end of the day, freedom will win out over the doctrines on the left, the communists, and all these other people that have destroyed everything they've ever touched. And so we just have to have more free speech, in my opinion.
As a Cuban American, I see somebody with a Che Guevara shirt and it brings up feelings, but I don't act on those feelings because I'm not an animal. But the hypothetical, and I'm not asking you to comment on like a case, because you don't have everything in front of you. The hypothetical that I told you about the video and the affidavit, this is a real case. It's a case out of UCF. I know somebody named Rich Perkowski, and through the reporting of Sarah Fields, which is a great investigative reporter of mine, he's a street preacher, and they were on campus. They were on like a parking garage. I don't know if you've heard about this. And he's a street preacher, and there was a group of Muslim individuals that were praying, and he was preaching, and they were kind of like battling it out, and he was the one charged with a misdemeanor. The arrest affidavit does not show, he was live streaming, so he had a body camera on. And he was, but in this case, I reached out, and she's done actually amazing work. State Attorney Susie Lopez, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's done amazing work, but I think even doing amazing work, you get things wrong. And again, I'm not asking you because I'm just throwing this at you now, but like as a former prosecutor, based on just how I presented, does that charging decision sound sound to you?
Well, I don't know anything about the facts of the case, although I've heard something about this case. I think I was in a conversation with somebody the other day, and I said I hadn't seen or heard about it, but I've heard about it.
I'll send it over to you after we get off.
Yeah. Here's what I'll say is I mentioned, the job of the prosecutor is basically think of a funnel, and the cops, use a broader standard, and so they're right to do that. There's nothing wrong with what they're doing to bring it's a lower standard, but as it gets to the state attorney, that standard goes up in terms of, in the case of a felony, a likelihood of conviction. And so, if I don't have a likelihood of conviction based on the evidence, in this case, video evidence, I shouldn't bring the charge. However, do we make mistakes? Yes. And I've had cases, and the point I'm trying to make here is that a prosecutor has an ongoing duty, even after the charges are brought. And I had this happen where I had to look at it and say, look, we got the wrong guy, or the evidence is pointing in the other direction. We need to drop the charges. And so I've done that before as a prosecutor. And again, you're a minister of justice as a prosecutor. You have to call balls and strikes and do justice. You're not there just to run up a batting average for how many people you can prosecute and convict if the evidence shows that there was a mistake. And look, we're human beings, and so everybody, it's not that there was necessarily, any kind of evil intent sometimes. It's just that you got some bad witness testimony, or these people lied to the cops, and then it comes to the state attorneys, and we file the charges. But when you see, as the case develops, because the case keeps developing, you start, talking to those witnesses, and now they're changing their story, or this video emerges that you refer to. And I don't know anything about the facts of that case, but when that comes, you've got to step back and say, time out. Maybe we need to revisit this and get rid of the charges. And we've done that. I've done that personally. I've done that several times when I was a prosecutor because it wasn't there. And you cannot prosecute somebody on that kind of evidence where it's starting to fall apart. That's not what our system's designed to do. It's supposed to be beyond a reasonable doubt. And where there's all kinds of doubt, the only right solution is to pull back on those charges.
Thank you for that. I'll send you, like I said, after we get off here, I'll send you a message so you could just take a look at it. I think it's a concerning case to me. Maybe it's personal to me because of what I went through. And a lot of people, I was one of the lucky ones to come out of January 6th, even with jail time, because I have the support of my family, I have the support of my community, I have the support of my organization. There's some people did 10 days. They were sentenced to 10 days in jail, and they lost everything. They lost their doctor's degree and licenses. They lost their home, their family, their ability to see their kids. So I consider myself one of the lucky ones, even though I got the highest sentence. But regardless, I thank you for coming on. I thank you and you have a very unique perspective to be our next governor because you've had all these roles. You served your country. You were a prosecutor, a minister of justice, as you say. You were a legislator. You were the Speaker of the House. That's a long resume of service. It's not a small one, and I don't think anybody should take that lightly. In your elevator pitch, why should Floridians trust you, and why should they look at you as like the next generational governor?
Well, I'm going to use those very words. I think you can just look. I was a generational speaker, and James Madison, which is a conservative think tank, called my first year the session of the century. The governor said that those 2 years I led were unmatched. So I was a generational leader already in helping the governor to build the free state of Florida. There's just no question about that objectively. So if you're looking at a generational leader for the next 8 years, think how powerful that would be to stack another 8 years as good as these last 8 on top of this, and we will be the envy of the world. And with all respect to the other guys who each have, something they can say for themselves, there's just not anybody else in the race that's going to give you a generational leader that will truly protect, and not only protect, but strengthen the free state of Florida, and has all the credibility in the world in terms of battle testing, in terms of delivering results that you can take it to the bank and know that when I put up my contract with Florida and say, this is my 100-day agenda, and we're going to stay after this, whatever doesn't get done in those first 100 days, that we're going to try to get the legislature to do every bit of it. We're going to stay after this, and that and then more. That's just the first 100 days. There's other things in the agenda, obviously, but you're not going to find another candidate with the battle testing, the results, the vision, and someone who's led from the front on school board races against some of these amendments to really fight the left and beat the left every time they bring something in to try to wipe out our state. And they're coming back. And if somebody didn't show up 18 months ago to fight alongside me and the governor in those efforts, why would we believe they're going to do that when they come back again? And so we have to have somebody who's I'm not looking to run for any other office than be your next governor and be the best governor I can possibly be, and a generational governor. And so I appreciate very much the time on the show and your listeners, and want to directly ask all of them humbly for your vote and your support, to share with your friends that it's not that guy, it's this guy to be your next governor. Time is, we've got 30 days. People are now focusing on this race, believe it or not, to put the word out. Go to voterenner.com to help us out, financially or volunteer, and put the word out to win on August 18th.
Amen. And where can people find you or support your campaign?
Well, voterenner.com is our website, but they can also follow us on X, on Facebook, on Instagram, TikTok. We've got platforms on all of those. You can just look us up pretty easily, and we'd love to have you follow us and help us in any way you can. Just let us know what county you're in and what you'd like to do, an hour or 100 hours, whatever you want to spend between now and August 18th. And if you can throw a few dollars into the pot, please do so, because the special interest I mentioned, the billboard lawyers and the big tech guys and all these guys, are not going to want me as governor, because I've stood up on behalf of Floridians and their rights to put them first against special interests, and I'll do it again as governor.
Amen. Thank you, Paul. To our viewers out there, I hope And again, I'm hoping to get Byron Donalds in here so I could say I got all four. I think this is the first time in my life as being a Floridian where I am confused because I feel like all four of you guys bring something to the table. Now, who's going to be the best governor and who can pitch themselves to the citizens of Florida, the residents of Florida the best? We'll see in August. But again, thank you so much for joining us, Paul. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time. And thank you guys for watching.
Load up on guns and bring your friends. It's fun to lose and to pretend she's overboard and self-assured. Oh no, I know a dirty word. Hello.
Prosecutor said Ethan Nordine was the undisputed leader of the group that day as they tried to prevent the peaceful transfer of power.
An FBI agent arrested Proud Boys former national chairman Enrique Tarrio at this home in Miami. By 2 this afternoon, he was in federal court.
Here we are.